Okay, quickly now, everybody. Whatever you're doing, cease doing it. We're talking about Benn Beckman. Why? Because it's the Benn Beckman video. That's why. If you're doing laundry right now, like you're taking a bunch of wet laundry out of the washing machine, you're dropping that laundry on the floor. It's Benn Beckman time. If you're driving a truck on the highway looking for adventure, which is apparently a lot of my fans, they message me and they're like, yeah, I like listening to your longer videos, Tekking, because I drive truck and, it gets, kind of boring. So I guess you're pulling over on the side of the highway because it's Benn Beckman time. If you're working at a bakery, stop and drop those donuts and those freshly baked cookies. It's Benn Beckman time. If you're performing heart surgery and listening to me in the background, well, it's Benn Beckman time. I don't know what to say. Okay, maybe in that situation, maybe you could focus on the heart surgery if any heart surgeons are watching my video right now. Okay, so why are we talking about Benn Beckman though? Okay, well, the situation was I was looking at a lot of the second in command of a lot of the Yonko crews, okay? So with Kaido, of course, we have King. And then with Whitebeard, we had Marco. With Big Mom, okay, I want to say Katakuri, but Parospero's been kind of getting more of the action lately, and he is the first son. So I'm assuming if Big Mom were to ever die, Parospero would become the new captain of the Big Mom Pirates, or the Parospero Pirates, or whatever they would be called. But Katakuri is, like, the strongest right after Big Mom. I mean, that's pretty apparent, so let's just say Katakuri. Blackbeard, of course, has Shiryu, and I've made a video about pretty much every single one of those characters I've just mentioned. In fact, multiple videos in some cases, like with Marco. But when it comes to Shanks, red hair Shanks, I have yet to make a solid video on his second in command, Shanks' right-hand man, as it were. Well, okay, I guess Benn Beckman wouldn't be Shanks' right-hand man, he'd be more of his left-hand man, because, Shanks lost his left arm to a giant Sea King. It wasn't even that giant, is the funny thing. It was like a small to medium-sized Sea King at best, really. But, hey, he had to bet on the new era. I'm sure Luffy will, make that wager justified and all that, giving up his left arm. But since he did lose his left arm, and in, connection with that, his left hand, which was attached to his left arm, he no longer has one. So I guess Benn Beckman would take up that position for Shanks. But at any rate, we're here to make a video about Benn Beckman today. Alright, so let's start this off with a little bit of a trivia contest. Are you guys ready for the trivia? Okay. I'll start off easy. What weapon does Benn Beckman always carry into battle? What weapon in every single appearance Benn Beckman has been in does he always carry? That's right. If you guessed a matchlock or flintlock rifle, I don't actually know the difference between the two because I'm not really a gun person, but if that's what you guessed, a rifle, then yes, you are correct. He always carries a rifle in every single appearance he's in. That goes from the manga, the anime, even in the opening theme of One Piece, he always has a rifle. Now, here's the real trivia question for you. How many times has Benn Beckman fired his rifle in the entirety of the One Piece story? And you know what? I'll include manga, anime, movies, OVA. How many times has Benn Beckman fired his rifle? Guess now. Okay, did you guess 0? Because congratulations, you're right. And your prize is having Barry stare into your soul. Well, whatever. If you got it wrong, Barry will still do that anyway. Yeah, so every single time Benn Beckman has shown up, he either has his rifle, he's like, holding it on his shoulder, or he actually puts it inside of his, like, sash or his belt, which, like I said, I'm not really a gun expert, but I feel like, my dad, he hunts sometimes with, like, a muzzle loader. I don't think my dad has ever, like, holstered his muzzle loader like a pistol, like, in his belt or whatever. That doesn't seem very safe. Also doesn't seem good for the gun either. But in every appearance, he's always holding it, but he's never fired it a single time. Which makes me wonder, is his rifle even loaded? Because that would be funny. That would be hilarious. Oda is obviously, holding off showing us, the fan base, what the red-haired pirates are really capable of, because that's probably going to be endgame level stuff, okay? We've never seen Shanks and his crew in a serious fight on screen, okay? We know Shanks has Griffin, which is probably like a Saijo Awazumono grade sword. He clashed with Whitebeard. He clashed with Aka Inu that one time. We know, of course, Benn Beckman uses the rifle that he never fires. Lucky Roo also used a pistol. He was actually the first person to murder somebody straight up in the One Piece story. Chapter 1, he just, goes up and shoots one of the mountain bandits right in the head, point blank range. So, yeah, Lucky Roo is a cold-blooded killer there. Yasopp, of course, being Usopp's father, is an expert marksman, except he doesn't use slingshots or kabutos or fancy dials or weird plants in order to get his effect. No, Yasopp just uses good old reliable firearms and bullets, mostly. I'm sure Yasopp actually has probably a lot of trick bullets, like a lot of really cool bullets like Verona in One Piece D&D that can like send people into the Shadow Realm, or maybe Yasopp does have some kind of bullet that's like vines that, you shoot the enemy and vines come out and trap them, kind of like Usopp's pop greens. Wouldn't be surprised there. I actually started to think maybe the reason Oda shows the red hair crew using guns so often is to kind of keep it away from what they're really capable of. Like, I don't think Lucky Roo's main combat, expertise is in pistols or firearms, okay? Lucky Roo, he might have a devil fruit, he might use Haki or something, but, he's not gonna bust out, this is my Haki, punch that can level an island. He's not gonna bust that out on random mountain bandits in the East Blue, right? So he's just like, I'm just gonna take out my pistol and just shoot you, and that's what he did, right? So, that is the case with Lucky Roo. Yasopp, it makes sense. But when it comes to Benn Beckman, it's always kind of like, bugged me a little bit that you have basically two marksmen on the crew, right? You have Benn Beckman and Yasopp. I would say Yasopp is the better marksman. I would say, he's probably the best in the entire world, unless we find out, like, Wang Zhi is still alive, and Wang Zhi was, like, the greatest marksman ever. But for right now, I'll say it's Yasopp. So, the one time we actually see Benn Beckman fight in the entire story, it was actually in Chapter 1, where the mountain bandits come up and they've kidnapped Luffy, and this is right before Lucky Roo shoots one. Actually, no, right after Lucky Roo shoots one in the face. You have the scene where Benn Beckman steps up to plate, and he's like, don't worry, Captain, I got this, okay? So the mountain bandits kind of charge at Benn Beckman with their swords. They're like scimitars. Benn Beckman first takes out his cigarette, which he's always seen smoking in every single scene he's in, takes out his cigarette, jams it in one of the bandits' eyes, and so, man, I can't see! And then he takes his rifle, flips it upside down, grabs it by the barrel, and beats the ever-loving crap out of all of the bandits. He uses his rifle as a club. Now, funny thing is, that is actually historically accurate. So I don't know much about guns, but I do know a bit about history, okay? And back in the day, when you had, like, a flintlock pistol or rifle or something like this, right? You got one shot with it, and then after that, you're pretty much done because it takes forever to reload these things, right? So a lot of times, the handles of these kind of guns would be made very blunt for the purposes of using them as a club. Sometimes they'd even be casted in, like, iron or bronze or some kind of metal. In fact, Benn Beckman's rifle, I think, is actually, the handle is actually casted in a type of metal. So the idea is, if you fire at your enemy and you miss, because also the accuracy on these things wasn't the greatest, I'm sure under Benn Beckman and Yasopp they're super accurate, but if they were to miss, they can flip their weapons around and still use them as a club, so they're at least not defenseless, right? That makes me think, like, back in the day when people still used to duel, like 10 paces, turn and fire, the duels or whatever. What would happen if, like 10 paces, they both turned around, they both fired, but they both missed? And so it was like, all right, well, it's going to take, like, a minute to reload these things, so maybe they would just stand there politely and just reload their guns, or would they just, like, have at thee! And then they just start attacking each other with the handles of their guns. I don't really know, but maybe look at a history book there, okay? So, it's not ridiculous. It's not, like, completely insane. That's like, that's not how you use a rifle. It's like, well, that is a way that they were utilized back then as, like, a secondary weapon, okay? So that makes me think, I wonder if the gun is even loaded. Maybe it's not even, like, that's his primary method of fighting. Maybe he just likes carrying around a rifle, right? Maybe he actually has a devil fruit, or he has Haki, or he uses something else in order to fight. What if it's like he's fighting against somebody with his rifle and his rifle gets broken and they're like, haha, Benn Beckman, you are nothing without your rifle that you're always known to use. And Benn Beckman just kind of smirks and laughs, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he's like, you ever actually see me fire that thing? He's like, well, no, but you always carry it around, and you're the second in command of the Red Hair Pirates, I assumed. He's like, that's what I want everybody to assume. In actuality, I have the Earthquake Devil Fruit! BAM! I guess that's Whitebeard's, but you know what I mean. Maybe some other earth-shaping fruit that can summon like a giant like stone prison. Well, I guess that's Pika's. All right, some really strong devil fruit that Benn Beckman has. He just only uses it when he's really serious, or he has some crazy powerful Haki, right? No, I don't think that's the case. I think he does use his rifle as his main weapon. It's just that when you're Benn Beckman and you're on the Red Hair crew and you're the second strongest out of that group of already really strong pirates, intimidation probably goes a long way, you know what I mean? Like, look what happened at Marineford. You know, Kizaru was about ready to piss his pants, and all Benn Beckman did was just kind of point his rifle right at him, who, by the way, Kizaru is a Logia, and he can travel pretty damn fast. He has the light Logia powers. So even if you want to say Benn Beckman has like Sea Prism Stone bullets or Haki bullets, we'll get into that in a moment. Even if you want to say that, it's like Kizaru should be so fast, he should be able to shake him, all right? But Kizaru at that moment was like, ooh, Benn Beckman, and I don't even believe he closed his lips when saying Benn Beckman. That was a skill only Kizaru has, right? But yeah, actually, it didn't really work out because Kizaru ended up leaving anyway. You know, it was like that one moment where Benn Beckman was really badass and he held up the rifle, and you know, Benn Beckman was just so slick in that one particular instance because he acted like it was just another day at the office, right? He didn't even act like this was a serious war between Yonko and the Marines. He just jumped on top of the mast of the ship. How he could get up there without Kizaru even noticing him, that's pretty impressive in and of itself. But then he just takes out his rifle, points it right at freaking Kizaru, just smoking his cigarette without even really barely even looking at him, and he's just like, don't move a muscle, Kizaru. And then Kizaru's like, oh, okay. So, yeah, that inspires a little bit of terror. Like, yeah, Kizaru managed to get away from Benn Beckman, but at that one instance, maybe Kizaru was like, all right, Benn Beckman does have me directly in his line of sight. Maybe I should be careful. I could still maybe get away, but I gotta be a little careful here. This isn't some random person with a rifle, you know, shooting targets at the local, you know, circus or whatever. This is a serious, you know, gunslinger I'm going up against, really, so I better be careful. Even if I can move at the speed of light, I gotta be very careful there, right? So, yeah, I imagine intimidation goes a long way there, but I'm sure the gun is loaded and he can actually fire some pretty powerful bullets. Let's talk about Haki infused bullets. I've discussed this before when I did Roger's video, because Roger also used a pistol and a sword in combat, so I was curious, like, this is Goldie Roger's pistol. It's got to be a little bit more of a special kind of weapon other than just a regular flintlock you could buy in a general store or a gunsmith on a random island, right? Okay. So Benn Beckman's the same way. You know, I'm sure maybe he designed it and built it himself, his own rifle, you know, and everything like that. He takes it apart and cleans it constantly, right? He knows the ins and outs of his weapon. So when I was talking about that, I brought up the Kuja's arrows, okay? So the Kuja obviously were able to infuse Haki into the arrows and then fire them, so I thought it would be a similar premise with the bullets in a rifle or a pistol. And some people actually were saying, it's like, well, it's not the same thing, because in that instance, when the Kuja were firing their arrows, they were still physically touching the arrow to infuse it with Haki and launch it, okay, with the bow. However, when you're holding a gun, obviously, you're not physically touching the bullets. You're touching the handle and the trigger, and then the bullet is inside, you know, the gun itself, okay? So would Haki work the same way? Well, as we learned during Wano with Ryuo and everything, an advanced form of armament Haki is being able to send your Haki, or, you know, make it invisible, send it into other things around you, okay? So you could use it to, like, block attacks like the admirals did at Marineford, or you could use it to channel into an object and destroy it from within. Then, of course, we learned you can combine Conquerors with this as well to have even more of a devastating effect. So, considering Benn Beckman is pretty old, he's pretty experienced, and he's on, you know, Shanks' crew and everything like that, I'm sure he's probably mastered this upper level of armament Haki, and, you know, probably the same thing with Yasopp as well. He's able to infuse his Haki into his entire rifle. That includes the entire weapon itself, so it can't be destroyed. Also, when he flips it around and does use it as a club, that's going to be armament Haki infused right there. But also, when he infuses his Haki, he might be so damn precise with this, he might be able to load a round into the weapon and then, like, focus his Haki directly on that bullet and then fire it off, and then it's a Haki infused bullet. I'm just saying, even if this is a hard thing to do, that, like, most people wouldn't be able to accomplish this, if there would be anybody in the world that would be able to fire Haki infused bullets, I would say probably Yasopp and Van Augur might be, like, number one, but Benn Beckman would be, like, number two in that instance, okay? Usopp, well, he's more of an observation Haki specialist and everything like that. Ooh, that might be something interesting. What if Yasopp is the observation Haki specialist in terms of sniping, and Benn Beckman is the armament Haki specialist in terms of sniping? I'm sure when it comes to the Red Hair crew, because they're a Yonko, fleet and everything like that, not really even a fleet, they're just one ship, but that's all they need. Yasopp, Benn Beckman, Lucky Roo, Shanks, they obviously know, like both armament and observation, with Shanks knowing Conquerors as well. So yeah, Benn Beckman, he might have armament Haki specialty, but he knows a little bit about observation in order to, target his attacks. He's still probably dead shot with that thing. But he might just be more, skilled at adding Haki to it. And that might be the difference between the two. All right, so when it comes to like an accuracy, gunslinging competition or whatever, Yasopp would probably win over Benn Beckman. But when it comes to sheer power, that devastating attack, that would probably be Benn Beckman all the way. In fact, maybe that's the reason he doesn't fire his rifle very often, because he knows that if he like channels his Haki into a bullet and fires that thing, it's gonna be like freaking antimatter, right? It's like, well, I don't like to fire it a lot, because if he was like at Fuchsia Village, and granted that was 12 years ago, so he was a little weaker back then, during Luffy's backstory and everything, but maybe the reason he didn't fire his rifle at Higama or the other bandits is because it's like, well, Captain, I could fire a shot, but that'll level the entire town. It's just like the kickback from that thing would be so intense. Like, Benn Beckman would be skilled enough so he would be able to withstand it, but imagine he takes out his rifle, fires it, the kickback on that thing would just like level the entire street behind him with just the air pressure, and then everything in front would just be like the Gao cannon went off, right? Just boom! Like a full power Haki infused shot from Benn Beckman would just obliterate everything, okay? And so maybe that's the reason why he doesn't like to do that very often. It's like, well, my shot will definitely kill you, but it'll also cause a lot of collateral damage. I don't want to do that. And then Yasopp is much more precise with his shots. I'm sure they pack a bit of a wallop as well, but, they're not as strong as that. So maybe we could go with something like that. That does sound pretty cool there. Benn Beckman was rated as the most intelligent man in the entire East Blue by Oda himself. Now, granted, this was a very, very long time ago. I think this was like right after the East Blue had kind of wrapped up, so I think we were in the Alabasta saga when he answered this in an SBS. Somebody just asked him, like, hey, Oda-sensei, who are the 3 smartest people in the entirety of the East Blue, or whatever? And so Oda's like, well, number 3 would be Nami, number 2 would be Captain Kuro, and then number 1 would be Benn Beckman. Something interesting to note, though, is later on in a Vivre card, we find out that Benn Beckman is actually from the North Blue, not the East Blue. It's very interesting. Benn Beckman is from the north, Lucky Roo is from the south, Yasopp is from the east, and then Shanks is from the west. So that's very interesting that all members of his crew come from the 4 Blues. That makes me think that before Shanks properly began his Grand Line journey, he made a point to travel to each of the 4 oceans, and he probably also traveled there as well during his days as an apprentice pirate on Roger's crew, but he went to the 4 Blues and he's like, I want to get the smartest or the fastest or the strongest or the most accurate, of all the pirates from the 4 Blues to all join my crew together, okay? And I think that's what he did. He found the best marksman in the east, who would be Yasopp, and maybe the strongest marksman in the north, who would be, Benn Beckman. Shanks might be the best swordsman right now that came from the west, and we don't know how Lucky Roo fights. Maybe Lucky Roo might be just like the physically strongest, in the south or something like that. It was also mentioned that Shanks' crew has the highest average bounty out of all of the Yonko, out of all the pirate crews, I think, because he has a very small crew, but he definitely values quality over quantity in that particular instance, okay? And when it comes to the commanders of the Red Hair crew, like, Shanks' bounty is over 4 billion, but I can't imagine Benn Beckman's, Yasopp's, and Lucky Roo's would be too far behind his. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, okay, we see Katakuri's bounty is around 1 billion, 1,057 million. We saw King, well, we don't know King's yet, but we know Queen's is 1.3 billion. King's is probably like a little bit higher than Queen's, maybe like 1.5 or something like that. Jack's was 1 billion. We don't know Shiryu's yet. We don't know Marco's. Actually, yeah, wow, we don't know Marco's bounty. That is a little weird that we don't know Marco's bounty, isn't it? Yeah, we don't know that yet. Okay. But I would imagine if Shanks' bounty is over 4 billion, it might be Benn Beckman, Yasopp, and Lucky Roo are all hovering around maybe 2 billion, which would be very, very high for a second in command of a Yonko fleet. What does it mean by, Oda saying that he was the smartest in the East, but he's actually from the North? It could have meant that he was the smartest character that was introduced in the story in the East, which would have made sense. Or maybe Oda just forgot, because he does tend to do that from time to time. Maybe when he said Benn Beckman was originally from the North Blue, maybe he forgot that one random SBS question that he answered like over a decade ago, maybe closer to 2 decades ago at this point, and, you know, as it is. But suffice to say, regardless, Benn Beckman is extremely intelligent. I think that's the point that he was trying to get across there. And he didn't say Shanks. You know, he didn't say anybody else. He said Benn Beckman specifically is the smartest person in the East, okay? Maybe he's one of the most intelligent fighters, most tactical fighters in the entire world, okay? Maybe that's why he doesn't need to fire his rifle very often. It's just like he knows psychologically he can get the one-up on his opponents without, you know, bloodshed or without violence. Maybe that's something with him there, okay? I imagine, considering Shanks, and Shanks isn't an idiot by any stretch of the imagination, but Shanks can be very carefree sometimes. A lot of times he's just into like drinking and having parties. I feel like it's Benn Beckman's responsibility as the second in command there to make sure everything is kind of running ship shape. You know, when Shanks wakes up with the hangover at like 6 o'clock in the morning, he's like, oh man, we partied too hard last night. You know what we should do, Benn Beckman? He just lights up a cigarette like, what should we do, Captain? And he's like, we should party more tonight. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna go make sure the ship isn't, like, springing a leak, everything's good, maybe there's no Marines out to kill us. You know, you get some rest, Captain, here's some Tylenol, you know what I mean? Like, that's Benn Beckman's kind of responsibility. He does party with the rest, but he doesn't seem to get as into it as the other members of the Red Hair Pirates do. You get the impression that, like, he's okay for having some drinks and having fun, but at the end of the day, it's maybe his responsibility to make sure that, like, alright, if the Marines attack, or if another pirate crew attacks, or if the island we land on is full of a cult that's trying to summon Cthulhu or a great dragon or something, it's probably my responsibility to make sure I'm on that, you know, in case somebody tries to attack us, you know, I'm aware of the surroundings, maybe they take turns or whatever. And like I said, Shanks isn't like so stupid that he just doesn't care about that stuff. He does, and when the situation really calls for it, like going to meet the Gorosei, he's up to the task 100%. But he does have a bit of a wild side to him, and it's like, it's Benn Beckman's job to kind of reel him in. You know, it's also kind of the same situation like with Rayleigh and Roger, you know, where Roger was this free spirit running around like, aye, Rayleigh, look at that island, it seems there's a giant monster there, I'm going to go cut it down, aye, matey, and then he just starts sprinting for the island, and then Rayleigh is just like, oh, Captain, why? You know, so he's kind of the level head that has to maintain everything, right? Also kind of similar to Zoro and Luffy a little bit. Yeah, Zoro might suck at directions, so he's not really good at guiding Luffy in that particular, you know, way, but when it came to like Usopp leaving the crew and Luffy was thinking about just accepting him back with really no consequences, Zoro was the one that put his foot down in that particular instance and said, hey, you know, I'm okay with you doing pretty much whatever you want most of the time. You are the captain after all. But every now and then I do have to put my foot down as a first mate. I do have to put my foot down that you can't just do whatever you want at any given time. Usopp left the crew. He knows what that meant. He fought you. He was defeated, and yet he still chose to, like, you know, leave. You know, he didn't have to, but he did. So yeah, I mean, Zoro's like, I'm okay with him coming back to the crew and all that stuff, but he has to apologize first, right? So that's the kind of stuff that probably Rayleigh would, you know, the kind of advice Rayleigh would give Roger, the kind of advice that Benn Beckman would probably give to Shanks every once in a while. But for the most part, they're a very friendly crew. They like to have fun and stuff, but when the time comes to be serious, they can all be serious. Benn Beckman probably just being the most serious. So with that being said, that's pretty much Benn Beckman. Just a few other things to mention about his character really quick. So when he first met Luffy, he had black hair that was tied up in a ponytail. He's since cut his hair, and now it's very gray, which makes me feel like maybe he is under a lot of stress. Maybe he's encountered a lot of stress being the level head of the Red Hair Pirates for over a decade, and that's why his hair went gray, whereas, like, I don't see that with Yasopp or Shanks or Lucky Roo. They seem to be fine, but, like, Benn Beckman is the one, like, probably that's also why he smokes. Maybe it's, like, stress smoking, like a pack a day or whatever, like, whew, yeah. He also has a scar on the side of his face, you know, so he probably got that from some kind of enemy, some kind of sword wound. I don't really know how that happened. I think he also has a scar on his arm as well. So yeah, it's just like some, you know, appearance things relating to Benn Beckman, that he might be a little bit more stressed out there than the other members of his crew. But yeah, that's the video. It's not much, but I'm sure we'll get more with Benn Beckman later on in the story. You know, it's insane. What are some other characters in anime that have been around for a very, very very long time, and yet the mangaka has yet to really showcase them off in a major way or in a serious fight, or keeping their abilities maybe a little bit a secret, like under the table, until like the climax of the story. You know, that's hard to do sometimes, you know, especially like you don't know how long your series is going to last. It could always get canceled. Obviously, that's not going to happen with One Piece, but you just never know. So a lot of times you might introduce a character like, oh yeah, in a few hundred chapters, he's going to be really badass, and then the series might get canceled and you might never see it, right? I'm trying to think of an example, like a really cool character. Like, okay, this isn't really a great example, but like Whis from Whis from Hunter x Hunter. Whis from Hunter x Hunter. No, Whis from Dragon Ball Super, okay? So like, Whis is an angel, he's wicked strong. We've yet to see him in a serious battle where he's actually pushed to his limits. Whether or not a being could even exist to push him to the limits is up for debate, other than like other angels or like the Grand Priest. Like if the Grand Priest fought against Whis, that would be like a fight that might like seriously level the entire universe if it got out of hand, right? Yeah, exactly. Maybe it happened in Dragon Ball Heroes, because I know a lot of crazy stuff happens in Dragon Ball Heroes. But anyway, let's just move on to the ant facts. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. Let's go to it. Here they are. Intro.
Ant facts. Facts about ants and other insects, but mostly ants.
Okay, and this is going to be a fun episode of Ant Facts, because just look at this ant right here that we're talking about today. That ant just spells fun, right? All right, so this is the bull ant, also known as the bulldog ant, or my favorite term, the jack jumper, okay? They're native to Australia, which means they're horribly deadly. Not all of them, actually. So they're under the genus Myrmecia, and so there's a bunch of different species. There are actually a lot of different species of Myrmecia that all fall under this bull ant category. The one that's the most dangerous is Myrmecia pyriformis, okay? And it was actually given the title of the most dangerous ant in the entire world by the Guinness Book of World Records, all right? So, pretty painful sting. The stinger itself is over 6 millimeters long, and it's retractable, so they can sting you multiple times. The mandibles look pretty, you know, scary. Not as scary as the army ant, but it's getting up there. Yeah, pretty scary there. The reason this particular ant, the pyriformis, is called the jack jumper is because they tend to jump. You know, when they're threatened, okay? And they can jump several inches away, you know, much like the army ant. If you invade their territory, they will just, like, gwomp you and attack. But they're also a very popular ant when it comes to ant farms. I've actually seen I've been watching a lot of ant keeping YouTube videos as of late, given the fact that I'm doing ant facts now as, like, a regular thing for some reason other than just a running gag. But I enjoy it, so I've been watching a lot of ant farm videos, and there's plenty of them that actually have Myrmecia ants of the genus of the bull ants, you know, as ant farms, and they get them from Australia, and, you know, the queens are very large, and sometimes there's more than one queen in one particular colony there, and, yeah, they're very impressive, but also considered one of the most dangerous ant species, in fact, by Guinness, the most dangerous ant species in the entire world. So I guess if you're into ant farming, maybe look up Myrmecia, because they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. All right, well, anyway, that was Ant Facts for the day. Hope you enjoyed. Ant Facts! And have a good one, everybody. Once again, remember, the berry plushies are still for sale. That's going to go until, I think, early July, like July 2nd, July 3rd. So if you haven't gotten yourself a berry plushie, follow that link down below, and you will be whisked away to the Tekking101 store. Thanks for watching again. Tekking, signing out.